Okay, before we start, I just want to remind you, I don't think I said this to second period today, you need to skip question 17. So if you're confused on 17, I made that more difficult than I meant to. That's a question for next week. So you can go ahead and mark that one out for today. All right, so real quickly, we're just going to talk about how to get some of these answers for your review test for tomorrow. All right, so when we talk about graphing a linear inequality, remember there are always two questions you have to ask yourself. Is it going to be solid or dashed? And that's talking about the line type, or are we going to be shading above or below? Questions like 1 and 2, question 1 specifically is a good question for intercepts, where you can cover up and find that the x-intercept is going to be 2 if you divide, which is why we've made a point here at 2. The y-intercept is going to be -1, so if we look at that and divide, we get -1. And then remember, you have to look at the y and the symbol to determine if it's going, how the shading is going to go. So the symbol itself is going to give us a dashed line, right? Open circle, think dashed line. And then because this is negative y, it's going to flip my symbol around. And because it's greater, now I'm going to shade above. Remember, sometimes it's easy to see above, but if you ever get stuck, you can use the arrows and it makes it a little easier to see why we're shading this section up here. Question 2, don't get deceived. It's a little hard to divide -3 by 6. That gives you a fraction. So instead we're going to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 6x, which is going to give me y is greater than or equal to -6x minus 3. So I started at -3 here, and then I'm going to use the slope -6, and remember, because you don't have enough room to go down 6 and right 1, we can go up 6 and left 1 to find our new point. And then our symbol right here, and you actually should probably even look at the original problem, is going to mean solid and shading above. And since this line's really steep, the arrows really do help us see that shading above is going to mean this whole side of the line. Question 3, pretty simple. It's just a y equals line, so I'm going to cut through the y-axis at -2 here, and then that symbol is going to tell me dashed and shaded below. Question 4, that's in slope-intercept form, so I'm going to start at 3, and then my slope is going to be -4 over 5, which is going to tell me to go down 4 and to the right 5, or up 4 and to the left 5. And then our symbol is going to mean solid and below. So that's why I've made a solid line and shaded the entire section below. Make sure you shade everything on that side of the line. Last ones for this page, questions 5 and 6. Question 5 is in slope-intercept form, which means this right here is really y equals mx plus b. So that's y equals 1x plus 0. So we started at 0. Use a slope of up 1 over 1. And then this symbol, when we do our graphing, is going to mean dashed and to shade above, which is why you see the answer as you have it. 6, sometimes people get a little bit confused about. You know that x equals -2 is a line straight up and down, and you know that this symbol means dashed. Sometimes people get confused because there is no above or below, and that's because this says x, there's no y. And if you think about x being greater, that's to the right. So if you have x is greater, that's to the right. If you see something that says x is less than, that's going to mean I'm going to shade to the left. All right, questions 7 and 8 are asking us to write an inequality. So this is backwards. It's like they're giving us the answer and asking us what was the equation to begin with. So, and this is, remember, this is actually an inequality, and we know that because there's shading and a solid or dashed line. So this line cuts through the y-axis at 3. So that's like y, it's like y equals 3, but instead of equals here, we want to put a symbol. And because this is dashed, I know it's either going to be greater than or less than. And because it's below, I want to choose less than so that we talk about that shading. So this answer is y is less than 3. On question 8, I'm going to find my y-intercepts at 5. My slope, let's see, my next point's right here, so that looks like a slope of -3 over 1, so I've got y -3x plus 5. So now I have to think about my symbol. This time my line is solid, so that's going to be greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And it looks like they have shaded above, which means that this would have been greater than or equal to as my final symbol and my final answer. All right, questions 9 and 10, and this goes for 11 and 12 also. When it says solve by graphing here, you don't need to do any algebra. You don't have to do substitution or set anything equal. You just need to graph the lines and show the answer. So hopefully you remember that because on 9, these have the same slopes. Hopefully you already remember that this is going to be no solution because they have the same slope, and that is going to mean that they're parallel. And so when you graph that, in fact, you find that, right? Start at 4. You're going to have to go down 2 and to the left 1, or start at -1 and go up 2 and to the right 1. And then because they don't intersect, your answer, the actual answer you're going to write is no solution. Question 10, when we look here, x equals -2, that's easy. That's just a line that cuts through the x-axis at -2. And on 4, we can do intercepts. So if you cover up, x is -4, y is -4. So notice that they've made those 2 points, -4 and -4. And when we connect everything, we see that the intersection is right here at -2, -2. So you'll write your answer as this ordered pair. All right, question 11 and 12, those are a little different because you've got to solve somehow and make this equation a little easier to graph. So the first equation for question 11 needs to be fixed so that it's y equals, because that's not even standard form. So if I move the 5x over and the -2 over, I'm going to get y equals -5x, because I have to subtract, plus 2, right, because both of those things are moving across the equal sign, which is going to tell me then to start at 2, and then go down 5 and to the right 1. All right, so that's this first line right here that I'm tracing in blue. And then our second equation, that's already in standard form. Super easy to do with intercepts. So if I cover up x, that gives me y is -2. If I cover y, x is -2, which is why we've made these 2 individual points. And then when you connect, you should see the point of intersection is right here at 1, -3. Always make sure you write your answer as an ordered pair unless it's a special case. And then question 14, both of those equations need to be fixed and solved for y. So if I do that, the first one is actually kind of written backwards. You may notice the only thing you need to do is divide by 2. So if I divide everything by 2, I'm going to get y equals 3 over 2x. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so plus 2. So I've started at 2. I'm going to go up 3 and forward 2. And remember to keep that pattern going all the way through your graph so that you can find the exact point of intersection. There's my first line. And then my second line, that just says 4 plus y equals 0. So if I solve that, that's y equals -4, which is just this line down here that's going to cut through the y-axis at -4. And again, as we've said, our answer is our point of intersection right here where the 2 lines cross each other. All right, last page already. Remember, anything is good for substitution as long as one of the equations says x equals or y equals. So question 13 says x equals, so I'm going to plug this into the x spot. -2, always use parentheses when you're plugging in, plus 4y equals 6. We're going to distribute. That's going to give me -4y plus 6 plus 4y equals 6. And notice that this -4 and 4y cancel. So I'm left with 6 equals 6. And because all my variables are gone, that's true, which is going to tell me infinite solutions. Since we didn't see one on the graph, remember infinite solutions is when you have 2 lines that are right on top of each other. They share all of the same points. Question 14, this time I have an equation that says y equals, so I'm going to plug into the y spot. 2x minus 2, parentheses 2x minus 2 equals -4. Man, this one's got a lot of 2's. I'm going to distribute -2, so that's going to give me 2x minus 4x plus 4 equals -4. I combine like terms because they're on the same side, so -2x plus 4 equals -4. I'm going to subtract 4, -2x equals -8. And then if I divide by -2, x is going to equal 4. And remember, you need an x and a y. So you're going to have to take that and plug it back in. The easiest place to me to plug that back into is going to be the equation that you circled. So I have y equals 2 times 4 minus 2, or 8 minus 2, which is where they're getting that y equals 6. So you take these two things together and use them to make the ordered pair, which is the final answer. All right, question 15. Again, I've got an x equals, so we're going to plug into the x spot. -5 times 3y minus 8 minus 2y equals 6. When I do that, I'm going to get -15y plus 40. Make sure you're distributing the negative. Minus 2y equals 6. Combine like terms. So if I put -15 and -2 together, that's -17y plus 40 equals 6. Subtract 40. -17y equals -34. And then divide by -17, which is going to give me y equals 2. And now we're going to use that. We always have to plug back in to get our second value. So when I plug back in, I have x equals 3 times 2 minus 8, or 6 minus 8. So x is -2. Now make sure you get those in the correct order and you do x and then y, x comma y, when you write your final answer for your ordered pair. All right, got to give myself a little bit more room here. So y is -4, so now I've got my value for y. Don't forget that negative in front of the y sign. So when you plug this in, it's going to say 4x minus -4 equals 4. So notice the minus sign from before the y stays there, and then I put -4 in parentheses. Well, now because I have two negatives, that's going to become positives. That's 4x plus 4 equals 4. If I subtract 4 from both sides, I'm going to get 4x equals 0. And if I divide by 4, I'm going to have x is 0. Now, remember, that's not no solution. It's okay if it equals 0. The no solution comes when all of your variables disappear. And now, you could plug that back in, but if you read this second equation, it already tells you what y equals. The whole equation says y equals -4, which is where they're getting this final answer of 0, comma, -4. All right, remember I said that we're going to skip question 17. The problem is you know how to write those equations, but we haven't talked about how to solve those yet. So we're going to skip that and go ahead and move on to question 18. Now, question 18, if I think back, I think I actually made this maybe a little bit more confusing. And if we think back to what we did in the beginning, 180 degrees is a total in this problem, and it says we're adding two angles. So if we just draw out our blanks to set up our problem, I've got two angles that equal 180. And we used to say, which one do we know the least about? Well, we don't know, it says one of the angles. We don't know anything about one of the angles, so we'll call it x. And we know the other angle is 3 times as big, so we could call it 3x. Well, that's something that's pretty easy to solve, right? We can just combine like terms. 4x equals 180. And if we divide, we should get x is equal to 45. But now the question says, how big is the larger angle? So in our equation, the x right here, that's 45 degrees. That's my smaller angle. And then my larger angle is this 3x here. So if I do 3 times 45, assuming my math is right, I should get 135 degrees, which is going to be my larger angle. I don't know if that makes any more sense to you than some of the stuff we tried, the way I tried to show you the other day, but hopefully you at least caught on to one of those ways for the word problems. Don't forget to also study the word problems that we did in class today with the graphing of the inequalities, where we picked something that was a solution and something that was not a solution. There will be at least one question, well, it should just be one, but like that on your test tomorrow.